The buzz around the encyclical has been that this is the AI encyclical or the encyclical about AI. It's not primarily about AI, it's primarily about the human person.
Hello and welcome to St. John's Seminary Podcast. This is the last episode of our season 2, and today I'll be your host, Father Stanislaus Achu. I am the Interim Vice-Rector here at St. John's Seminary as well as a Professor of Sacred Scriptures. I have here with me Father Denis. Father Denis, please.
Like Father Stanislaus, this is Father Denis Nakkeeran. I serve as the Dean of Men here at St. John's as well as Professor of Moral Theology.
Thank you, Father Denis. It's good to have you. Today we'll be talking with Father Denis as a follow-up to our the previous episode before this, which spoke about encyclicals in general. And now we're looking into the first encyclical written by Pope Leo XIV called Magnifica Humanitas. Magnifica Humanitas of His Holiness Pope Leo XIV on safeguarding the human person in the time of artificial intelligence. And so today we have Father Denis, who is a subject matter expert on moral issues and bioethics. And so we'll be talking with him today about this. So Father Denis, could you just give us a general introduction of what this encyclical is all about?
Yeah, of course. I am a big fan of this encyclical. There's a lot that it tries to tackle and address, and I think Pope Leo is very direct in his approach of trying to really tell the world why we need to pay attention to the emerging and new and developing technologies that are present in our world right now. Basically, the main point of this encyclical is, as he indicates just from the title itself, this is really an encyclical about our humanity. It's about human nature, the human person made in the image and likeness of God. And while a lot of the buzz around the encyclical has been that this is the AI encyclical or the encyclical about AI, it's not primarily about AI, it's primarily about the human person. And from that perspective, understanding who the human person is, what does that mean with regard to our relationship with technology, how we interact with it, and what its use can mean for our human nature, either in service of our human flourishing or to the detriment of our human flourishing.
Good. Thank you. I think that's perfect because that's what the title is. Magnifica Humanitas, the magnificence of humanity, or the grandeur of humanity. So it's really about the human dignity. And I like how the article begins in the introduction of showing us really about humanity and what humanity is all about with the two biblical images that Pope uses to show this in terms of the image of the building of the Tower of Babel that we know from Genesis chapter 11, and then the gradual building of the city of Jerusalem that we read in the book of Prophet Nehemiah 1 and 2. Could you, Father Denis, just give our viewers a good understanding of what you think these two images are trying to explain in this?
Yeah, I think Pope Leo really hits the nail on the head with using these two very contrasting images to really give us an indication of what we are trying to do kind of here in this world, and using Scripture as an example to show us, we've been here before. I love this paradigm, and especially I've liked to use the Tower of Babel as an example in some of my classes before to show, when we're trying to reach the things of God on our power and our ability alone without a proper grounding in God, it ends in disaster. But that's the thing about the Tower of Babel is you had all these folks who were trying to build this tower to the heavens. They were essentially trying to reach godhood on their own terms, trying to reach godhood by their own power, and it ended up causing more strife and division at the end because in their hubris, they were trying to reach God, but God did not allow that to happen, and so they ended up being scattered. But this is in sharp contrast to the rebuilding of the walls of Jerusalem, particularly with Nehemiah at the helm of that. And so you had the prophet Nehemiah, who had been calling Israel back, calling the people of God back, and saying that, yeah, it's important that we build this, but we build this with God, that we build this for Him, right? This is the Lord's house, right? This is the Lord's place, and we want to do it for Him, and we all have a part in playing with that. And so we need to recognize what is common amongst us here, each doing our part to rebuild the walls, not for us, not for any of our personal goals, but really to glorify God at the end of it. Now, you're more of the scripture scholar, so I don't know if there's anything deeper there that you wanted to throw into the mix.
Not really. No, you said it perfectly well. The whole idea about the Tower of Babel is that men at that time were just wanting to show that they can do whatever they want to do in terms of building one nation, one language, one culture, one style and everything, and not bringing God into it. They took God out of it. And that's the image you have in Genesis 11. And then in the book of Prophet Nehemiah, as you rightly said too. And I also like how Pope Leo kind of exegetes it in this encyclical too. He points out the fact that Nehemiah, hearing about the ruins in Jerusalem and going to, first of all, obtain permission to ask the king that I want to, a Persian king, by the way, that I want to rebuild my city. And then even in obtaining permission, he took his time to consult from people. He made sure he found the history, knew what's going on, the ethical background, the culture, and all of those, and praying and fasting and calling upon God before he now got the go-ahead to do this. So bringing that all in is a good biblical image for us to always think about, to know how it's not just one person wakes up and says, I want to do this, and then they go on and do that and wants everyone to key in. But sometimes it's good to say, first of all, let's bring God in, and then let's consult each other and make sure we are all into this together and all of those. And I think that's what Pope Leo is saying in this article, in this encyclical. And so I want to throw it back to you, Father Denis. So from the perspective of ethics and morality, what do you think our listeners need to take away from what Pope Leo is saying using these two images, especially when it comes to technology?
Yeah, I love this paradigm, because if you put it most simply, we can do this whole prospect of life and progress and development with God or without God. And I think that's brass tacks what it comes down to. Tower of Babel, they were trying to quickly do this and show off and do everything without God, ended in disaster. Same thing when it comes to our technologies, right? We can quickly develop, and especially the 20th and 21st century have shown us that technology can develop at an alarmingly fast rate without even our full knowledge, as many of the AI engineers have already indicated that we don't fully know the systems behind what is driving a lot of the artificial intelligence technology and development right now. And it could just go ahead, and we can just allow the technology to develop and progress without much thought into it, and just ride the train without God. But I think this image is showing us that can lead to our detriment, because it removes more and more and more of our humanity and removes more of our connection to God, as opposed to the other image of Nehemiah coming, taking his time, looking at the situation, consulting, and getting people to work together towards this common goal, that we can take a look at this technology, see what's good about it, what can be built, but making sure that we're doing it with God and that we're doing it responsibly, using all of the good that comes from our scientific understanding, our technological understanding, but ensuring that it's grounded in faith and directed towards God, meaning that it will authentically lead to our good human flourishing rooted in the common good.
Well, thank you. Well said. And speaking of, again, the dignity of the human person, of humanity, Pope Leo would write in this encyclical that we shouldn't be thinking of technology, and we say AI, as neutral, morally neutral. Yes, it's a machine, and so we're not saying it has morality in itself, which is another problem that it has. But where he's coming in with saying that we shouldn't think of it as morally neutral is that it actually takes on, kind of paraphrasing here, the morality of those who are behind it, the creators, those who finance it, those who impute resources and data into it. What do you think he's saying there, and how do we understand what he's saying?
I love that Pope Leo made sure to actively include this, because that's been one of the things that's been lacking in a lot of our discussions, I think, around technology and particularly around the use of AI, is it's not merely a tool. Its existence already implies a previously held worldview, ethic, and particular input and context into what the technology already is. And so you see in early instances of artificial intelligence, there's already some algorithms that have been programmed into it, right? There's already a specific direction that it's going towards, meaning that the programmers behind it, the engineers and architects that put together the AI, had a specific goal in mind. And so all of the way that this whole neural network is put together is to try to accomplish that goal, meaning that it sets the parameters. The creators set the parameters. The creators offer the orientation for it to work. And while, yes, there can be some leeway in how those parameters are put in, there is already still a bias in terms of what is accomplished. So early stages of Claude or ChatGPT, for example, you want it to sound human, is already part of the goal. It's not trying to it's trying to be an assistant in some ways, but part of its goal is it's trying to sound human, and so its goal is to make you want to interact with it more. Because the more you use it, the more you're using a program, the more you're going to likely buy a product, right? And so its purpose is to try to draw your attention to use it more, meaning that it's already has a business orientation to it, to draw a consumer to be even more of a consumer and create more of a dependence on this artificial technology. Now, there are many other examples of AI trying to accomplish particular tasks, but the way that those tasks are structured are already going to be from the biases of the creators themselves. Okay, here's the goal we want to accomplish. Here's what I think is going to be the best way to do it. So I'm going to structure the AI to ensure that that can happen, giving a little bit of wiggle room, but because of that, you're already taking into account what do the creators, the architects, the engineers have in mind that they're going to put in as bias. You can extrapolate this and put this into the greater sphere of, for example, one particular application of artificial technology, artificial intelligence that a lot of kind of ethicists have some concern towards is the use of this in the college application process, or its use within higher education. Okay, you're trying to use an artificial intelligence to figure out, of all your thousands of applicants, who should be admitted into this school. And so it means you're setting the parameters of what it's going to look like. So how are you going to define success or worthiness of acceptance into this university? Is it going to be merely academic merit? Is it going to be the number of extracurricular activities? What is it going to look? How do you assign the value for it to then determine this is the student? And then the AI can go into its own interpretations, and it itself then assigning value to people based on all these other factors. And unfortunately, you found in kind of early tests that there have been cases where, okay, socioeconomic status has played a factor. And so people of a lower socioeconomic status, because of how statistics work, have been associated with lower end or lower quality applicants. And so there is a bias against those of a lower socioeconomic status in the application process. So AI can only look at values. It can't look at people. And so the biases that assign particular values to particular aspects of human persons are already going to be coming into play with regards to any sort of use of artificial intelligence. And so we have to be very cautious about that. So it's not merely a tool. We have to see everything that went into creating the tool itself. Just like simple tools, right? You can have all different kinds of knives that have different particular goals, right? You have the paring knife that's for things that are a bit more precise, big old meat cleaver for trying to get the big chunks of meat that you need. But the creator of those tools has a particular goal in mind, and that's going to be the bias in terms of how it's structured. Mm-hmm. It's very similar to our artificial intelligence. What are they trying to do, and what does that mean in terms of how it affects my humanity and how I am being perceived by others, and how this is feeding into a system that could perpetuate and further influence the devaluing or artificial valuing of the human person.
Wow, thank you. You're a good teacher. I really understood everything you're saying because it makes very much sense. And it goes into the whole thing that Pope is also talking about in dehumanization, then into transhumanism and posthumanism. That could take us another episode to talk about that, but let me move on. Can we talk about the technocratic paradigm and the digital power in terms of artificial intelligence, and also kind of in the way that Pope talks about it in the encyclical?
Absolutely. Trust me, I would love to talk about transhumanism, posthumanism. We there's a lot that can be talked about there. But at least with regards to the technocratic paradigm, Pope Leo is very intentional in using this term, and basically breaking down this term. The technocratic paradigm basically means that we are allowing technology to be the determinant of power in our society. Right? Those who have access to and those who are creating technologies are the ones who have the ability to control society. Now, when I say control, I don't mean in terms of a nefarious sort of mode or anything. We're not talking about like some sort of evil villain necessarily. Although there are plenty of movies that show where this can go, but at the very least, the technocratic paradigm means technology equals power. So those who are creating the technologies are the ones who can be determinant of how society can be run, and who they give access to. So who has access to technology can then affect how society functions as well. And so the idea of if technology is power, then how are we going to allow technology to dictate how society functions and how we interact? The technocratic paradigm as it stands, and what Pope Leo cautions against, is that we allow technology to be the determinant of power, right? Technocratic, right? So we don't want the technology to be the determinant of power. We want human persons to exercise legitimate authority over others, right? Authority is a good thing, and right, governance is a good aspect. It's required for the common good. It's part of the natural law. Yes, some have to govern others, but in such a way that can allow for us to flourish in virtue and be able to live towards the common good. But if technology is a determinant of power, then you're just allowing what's called basically the technological imperative. Right, so the technocratic paradigm will very much, unless it is safely guarded, will give way to what's known as a technological imperative, which means that basically, if we can do it, we should do it. If we have the ability to do it, let's just go ahead and do it. And I'm sure so many of our listeners have seen Jurassic Park and know the infamous quote, and I'm just going to paraphrase it here. We've done all this stuff to show that we can, and we never stop to think if we should. Yeah. And that's the essence of the technocratic paradigm, is technology says we can do it, and because technology is power, we're going to do it.
And thank you for that. And that's also what he talks about in chapter 4, in terms of then to not let this technocratic paradigm become the rule of things. So in order to protect the dignity of human work in this age of digitalization and everything. And so it's important I would like you to speak about that too briefly, to always think of the human person, first of all, our limitness, our finitude, our weakness, and all of those, and not want to have to kind of see ourselves or pair ourselves with technology that has none of these weaknesses and all of those. Could you talk about that, please?
Absolutely. And so one of the places where we see an almost immediate effect of the advancement of technology is in human labor. And human labor has been under attack for a long time. Leo XIII talked about it in Rerum Novarum. And human labor is a very interesting thing, right? Because even before the fall, man worked, right? The human person had custos over the garden prior to the fall. So God intended for us to be able to work. There's something dignified in work, right? It's a continual encounter and participation in the Lord's creative act. And so we get to, again, participate in that. There's a dignity in it. You get to pour yourself out into something. You get to give of yourself into something and really work to provide the means for your own sustenance, to provide the means for the sustenance of others, and secure basically the foundation for you to be able to flourish. It's a good thing. But human labor is under attack. And with the technocratic paradigm, with the advancement of these technologies, AI and a lot of these technologies are replacing a lot of essential elements of human labor. Now, of course, over the centuries, we've seen technologies be able to assist us in labor, right? Make things easier. You have all kinds of wonderful mechanized farm tools to help you to farm. And that's good. That helps really allow for a much larger production and yield in all of this, make things easier. But we're also seeing things now being replaced. Unfortunately, I remember I saw a billboard once as I was driving about this one company that is promoting and praising soon, right? Humans can be replaced with technology, and that's not a good thing. Technology can be helpful and assist us in doing, maybe some of the menial tasks that could be done quicker with technology. But there's a dignity in human labor. Human labor should not be replaced. And if technology is there to replace human labor, then it is going to be actively contributing towards our downfall. It's going to be actively working against us in our flourishing, because human labor contributes to human flourishing. If we want technology to be at the service of our human good, which that's its purpose, right? God gave us the gift to be able to develop technology, to develop these tools, right? The prospect of using technology is good. However, we have to be very cautious in its application, right? So if we're looking at the mere object of this whole enterprise, the use of technology in human labor, we're looking at something that is nuanced, right? Because we've already talked about that these aren't just merely neutral objects, right? There's already something behind it. The prospect can be good. So because we're talking about a nuanced object, we have to be very careful in what's the intention and what are the circumstances around it, right? All the things that comprise the basic idea of what constitutes the moral act. And so from the mere object itself, we already have to exercise caution. Technology can be good, but the way is it's structured already, is it already good? We have to discern. And that's what Pope Leo calls for, like continual discernment of technology. So we can't just say neutral object, we just use it for a good end and a good intention. Right from the get-go, we have to discern. Right? This technology, can it be good? Maybe. It depends. Yeah. It's one of my favorite terms as a moral theologian. It depends. But that can't be taken lightly. Yeah. Right? There has to be continual discernment, because if we want, first, as we're looking at human labor, if we want human labor to be respected, if we want people to be able to authentically flourish, then we have to see what's going to be in service of our ability to engage in human labor. Otherwise, I don't know if you've seen the Pixar movie WALL-E from back in, I think, 2009. Yeah. technology can completely replace everything, and we're just going to turn into a bunch of lazy bums,
Yeah.
But that doesn't look like good human flourishing.
No. And Pope Leo is not saying, he says it in this encyclical too, he's not saying yes or no to technology, he's only calling for the caution and all of that. Father, is there any other thing you want us to know about this encyclical, or anything that this encyclical can help us understand about how Pope Leo is thinking?
I think one of the key things to understand is, unlike a lot of other encyclicals that have been addressed to the bishops throughout the world, or even to all people of goodwill, Pope Leo does not specifically address this encyclical to any one particular group. He just comes right into the gate, because he is implying that he's addressing all of humanity here. He's like, look, I'm just going to cut to the chase. This is all of our issues. We have a common issue here. And we have a common goal to be able to understand who we are as human persons. And I think that's what he wants to ground it in, is that this is not a prospect for the few to discover, but truly for all of us to be able to grasp, understand, wrestle with, discern, and work together towards the common good, again, rooted in proper, intrinsic, ontological human dignity, as he indicates, to which is grounded in our Imago Dei, right? Grounded in the image of God. So all of it together, we have this task directed towards God, but it has to be done with God.
Thank you so much, Father. And I hope our listeners have learned a lot about this new encyclical, the first encyclical of Pope Leo XIV, Magnifica Humanitas, and how to continue to safeguard our humanity in the face of AI. Thank you so much, Father.
Thank you, Father Stan. For any of our listeners who are interested, I put together a relatively short summary of the encyclical, going kind of chapter by chapter, seeing what the highlights are for each of those, and I just put it together in a short little Substack article. So those will be linked in the show notes for anyone interested in reading that. It'll be a little shorter than reading through the entire encyclical, but hopefully this summary will serve as a good kind of intro and indicator as to what you can look forward to in the whole encyclical.